Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing, and confusing them might be quietly costing you everything. There's a specific kind of person the world never quite knows what to do with. They're not shy, they're not broken, they're not running from anything. They just prefer to be alone. And people find that unsettling, because we've been taught that wanting solitude is a symptom. That if you're happiest by yourself, something must have gone wrong somewhere. But what if it didn't? What if the people who prefer being alone actually understand something the rest of us are still afraid to admit? This is the psychology of people who prefer being alone. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong. Being alone and being lonely are not the same. They're not even close. Loneliness is a lack. It's wanting connection and not having it. It hurts because there's a gap between what you have and what you need. Solitude is a choice. It's having the option to connect and choosing stillness instead. There's no gap, there's just peace. The problem is that from the outside, they look identical. A person sitting alone at a cafe could be quietly falling apart, or quietly the most content person in the room. You can't tell by looking. So the world defaults to assuming the worst. If you're alone, you must be sad. If you turn down the invitation, you must be antisocial. If you need space, something must be wrong. But for the people we're talking about, none of that is true. They're not withdrawing from life, they're withdrawing from noise. And there's a difference. So what's really going on inside someone who prefers solitude? Every conversation, every interaction, every crowded room sends a stream of information at your brain. Faces to read, tones to interpret, expectations to meet, silences to fill. For most people, that's just background noise, manageable. But for certain minds, often deeply observant, deeply feeling minds, every one of those signals lands with full weight. They don't experience a party as fun and easy. They experience it as work. Constant, invisible, exhausting work. And so, when they finally close the door and sit in silence, it's not sadness they feel, it's relief. The nervous system, finally getting to exhale. There's something else too. People who prefer solitude tend to have a rich inner world. Thoughts, ideas, reflections that need room to breathe. And you can't hear your own mind in a crowd. You can only hear it in the quiet. For them, being alone isn't empty. It's where they finally get to be full. Now here's what almost nobody tells you about people who choose solitude. They're often extraordinarily good at something the rest of us struggle with. Being okay, without constant reassurance. Most people need other people to feel steady. They need the text back, the approval, the confirmation that they're liked and wanted. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're social creatures. But someone who's comfortable alone has built something rare, an internal source of stability. They don't need the room to tell them who they are. They already know, and that changes everything. They make decisions based on their own judgment instead of the crowd's. They're harder to manipulate because they're not desperate for approval, and they often develop deep skills, deep thoughts, deep creative work, because mastery requires solitude. No one ever got truly good at anything in a room full of distractions. There's a quiet strength in a person who enjoys their own company. They've made peace with the one relationship most people spend their whole lives avoiding, the relationship with themselves. But let's be honest, because this part matters. Preferring solitude is a strength. Hiding in it is not. There's a line, and it's worth watching for. Solitude is healthy when it restores you. When you go inward, refill, and come back to the world steadier. But it can quietly turn into avoidance, when being alone stops being a choice and starts being a wall. A place you go, not to recharge, but to escape, to avoid people who might hurt you, or disappoint you, or ask something of you. The healthiest version of this isn't someone who can't be around others. It's someone who can, deeply, warmly, but simply doesn't need to. Because the goal was never to shut the world out. The goal was to be whole enough that you get to choose when to let it in. If you love your solitude, protect it. But every now and then, check that the door still opens from the inside. So, here's what I want you to take from this. If you're someone who prefers being alone, you're not cold, you're not damaged, you're not missing some social gene that everyone else got. You're someone who found peace in a place most people are too afraid to sit. You learned to enjoy the silence. You built a world inside your own head that's actually worth spending time in. That's not a flaw to fix. For most of history, the people who changed things, the thinkers, the artists, the builders, were the ones comfortable enough with solitude to hear their own ideas, over the noise of the crowd. The world will keep telling you to get out there, to be more social, to fill every empty evening. You don't have to. Some people are meant to be filled by the quiet, and if that's you, there was never anything wrong with you at all. If this resonated, you already know which kind of person you are. I make videos about the quiet parts of the mind, the patterns most people feel, but never have words for. So, if you want to understand yourself a little better, stick around. The next one might just explain something you've been carrying your whole life. Until then, enjoy the quiet.